Hello. I are sick. Are actually very sick. So sick like you can't even get up. This is taking effort, let's put it that way. Like I know I should eat, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I gotta get up and eat. Thankfully the laptop is right there, so now someone has agitated me because this is a common recurring theme that shows utter ignorance, and I think a discussion will help advance everybody's understanding of economics. So that's why I'm going to put this video together. And that is capitalism, socialism, and communism. Now, take away what academics, Karl Marx, your sociology professor, your political science professor, take that all away and throw it all away. They're fucking idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. And the reason they don't know what they're talking about is that you have to understand that these people create terms to make themselves feel like they actually have a profession. A perfect example, not to keep harping on women's studies, but it's a great view into the psychological problems America has. You want to see some psychotic people. You look at it, they make up their own terms and phrases to describe phenomena that is naturally occurring, and everyone just takes it as common sense, and they add phrases and terminology to make it seem like there's this study unto itself which does not exist. Right? And the humanities, especially when you get into politics, there's an element of that too, nowhere near to the extent of, say, a whole study discipline made up of whole cloth like women's studies, but it's these phrases that they banter about amongst themselves. It is, not to be crass, but it is a circle jerk, if there ever was one of these faux intellectuals. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you the terms communism, socialism, and capitalism to you in a way that is productive and useful for the rest of society, because obviously academians don't give a damn about the rest of society. They only care about themselves. And I'm going to use it so that when you are talking with people, reading through the news, or if you yourself just want to understand politics and economics, this is I'm making this really simple. Not to make it, I'm not dumbing it down. I'm really boiling it down to its base elements so people are like, oh, I mean, this is going to provide an epiphany. There is no cutoff point from when an economy becomes a capitalist or a socialist or a communist country. Okay? It's a spectrum, like light spectrum or any other spectrum that gradates and morphs from one end of the spectrum to the other. On the extreme, I'll do it this way from my perspective because I want left and right to be congruent. On the extreme left, you have communism, totalitarian communism. The government owns everything. There is no private sector. Everybody works for the government because the government owns all the means of production. And as you'll see in many extremes, either capitalism or communism, very few instances of these exist. Communism existed in a handful of instances: East Germany, Soviet Union, today North Korea. You could say Cuba a little bit too. Okay, so that is where the government owns everything. Everybody works for the government, and so that's communism. There is no private sector. 100% of the private sector is communism. On the other extreme, you don't have capitalism. You have what's called anarchy, which means there's no government. It's all private sector. And a lot of people say, hey, that sounds great. I know there's a big anarchist movement or idealism amongst the life of Stefan Molyneux and all these other people out there. And idiotic high school kids. Yeah, anarchy, man. I'm for anarchy. Because I can't lift weights and I got nothing else going on. I'm going to say I'm an anarchist and wear a trench coat. So cool. Ugh. Anarchy is the other extreme, where there is no government, there is no authority or law, and it's the law of the land, it's no man's land. And you could say some instances of this exist. You could say it exists during war, you could say it exists in some, the Indian, Native Americans, American Indians, not East Indians, before the Europeans got here. There are some instances where there is no government, but again, very rare. Everything else in between is a gradation towards the center, which you could say is socialism, right? And socialism, well, what is socialism? Well, socialism is where some of the economy is the government and some of the economy is the private sector. What ratio that is, it really depends. Let's say you have a government that only consumes about 10% of GDP, your economy, okay? Government spending, roads, defense, infrastructure. All of that accounts for 10% of GDP. Well, that's pretty capitalist. You're looking at your Singapores, your Hong Kongs, Cayman Islands, Liechtensteins, Luxembourgs. No, not Luxembourg. I think Liechtenstein. Whatever, very low taxes. There is a certain amount of government that is needed to run the basic necessities, your universal goods. And that's it. The rest of it is the private sector. And that's the optimal form of government. That's not my opinion. That's just how it's laid out in the past. You look at it empirically, that's where the most amount of production and innovation and creation and standards of living and increasing and elimination of poverty occur. Look it up. Don't Sweden. Shut up. So you have most of the people that are free. We admit the government is a necessary evil. But we're going to keep it limited, like, I don't know, like our founding fathers did with the Constitution, republic. I don't know, what the fuck is that? Yeah. Anyway, so that's still considered a capitalist economy. You could go to Sweden, where it's roughly 60-65% of government and 40-35% of the private sector. All right? That's a little bit more on the lefter scale, but they still are a democracy. They're not a totalitarian regime like, say, the Soviet Union or communist China, which isn't really communist, but that's for another day. But they are definitely on the lefter side of socialism. Smack dab in the middle, you have countries like, well, you can't even say Norway anymore because they've been growing so much, but let's say historically Norway, Denmark, United Kingdom, where roughly 45-55% of your economy is half and a half. Half government, half private sector. Okay, so what's going to end up happening, and you got to be careful when you use these words, especially when you have an idiot academician or some idiot on the internet, especially the communists. They're like, communism isn't socialism. It's not the Democrats are socialists. Da, da, da. Use that spectrum to decide. Okay, right now, the United States, you know what percent of the economy is government spending? Oh, it's like 40%. Now, is that on the right side of 50%? Yeah, it is. Would you call 40% of an economy that's controlled and owned and spent by the government a pure capitalist economy? It's not. This is why I always say the Democrats are socialists, because they are. If you're at 40% spending, if you're at 40% government as a GDP, any advocation of further taxation and increase of government is towards that 50% mark. I'd say 40%, you're even arguing it there, like, well, 40% is still capitalist. All right, but can we admit that the Democrats want to take us to the left of that? They want us to have more government spending, which is going to approach 50%. Now, I don't know about you, but chances are you're not a fucking super awesome economic genius like I am. SAG trademark, just kidding. Don't want to be too arrogant. And besides, most of you listening are smart enough to know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who the United States is capitalist, it's socialist, shut up. Will you fucking stop spewing the leftist fucking retarded bullshit that your idiotic professors tell you and look at the data? I know data, look things up. How lazy are you kids? You got your phones. All the world's information is right there. Back in my day, we had to go to the library. And you Gen Xers remember microfiche, microfilm? Anyway, so yeah, you have every right to call the Democrats socialist. You have every right to call every European left-wing party, regardless of where they are, and the Canadians, the Labour Party, you have every right to call them socialists because they're advocating a move towards socialism if they don't have it already. And if you're in Sweden, good heavens help you. What those are communists because they want to even go to the left of a 60%, 65% government spending as a percent of GDP. And this brings up a very important point overall for everyone to understand politics, human nature, human psychology, especially those of left-leaning people. They will not stop. They won't. Okay. This gets back to the parasitic relationship that the left has with the right. The left, like a parasite, unconsciously will gorge itself. There's never such a thing as too much. They will keep going and going and going until all of the economic production is consumed, until they have everybody else's money. And you know what? It still won't be enough. There is no such thing as too much to the left. There isn't. Go to the teachers' unions, you go to any Democrat, any liberal, any socialist, consciously or not. Most of them never studied the budget. Go over to the United States, say, how much money do you need? How much more do you need? They don't have the answer because they've never sat down to figure out what it is. They don't budget. They don't say, well, what would it cost? Well, how much do we need to achieve our political aims? They have a political platform, but they have no commensurate financial plan that goes along with it. They have no economic plan that says, okay, we need X percent GDP here, we need spending on this much, and what's the final tap? They don't calculate it. It's just more, 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 more. Just like the teachers union. We've spent 5 times the amount, I think it's since 1960, maybe 1950. We've spent 5 times the amount per pupil, adjusted for inflation, accounting for all those other variables. And standards of education performance has not increased. Actually, it's gone down a little bit, and it depends on where you go. But they don't, you're going up against a lamprey. You're going up against a leech. You're trying to reason and rationalize with it. These are just suck, 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 suck. More, 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 more. What I'm simply trying to do is to provide both people on the left and the right, and everyone in between, the spectrum, or at least the concept that there are limited resources out there. Right? One, figure out where you are on this spectrum. And you can easily do that by looking at government spending as a percentage of GDP. I'm not listening or entertaining arguments about revenue. Okay? We'll talk... It's spending. That's the figure, because you're merely deferring future taxation into the future by borrowing money. But look at where your government spending is as a percentage of the economic production of the economy, GDP. That shows you where you are on the spectrum. And then, if you're really intellectually honest, ask yourself, do we want to go further left? No one goes further right. No one goes further right. No one says, oh, we should have, those evil Republicans, those evil conservatives, those evil Tories. Let's lower taxes and increase freedom. Those crazy, evil, fascist Nazis. No, everyone goes to the left, which I'm pointing to your right, but that's my left, because I'm very me-centric. We're going to have a Clary-centric world. So the old people are gone. The old people, you're not going to really convert anyone after 30. It's like converting a born-again Christian. It isn't going to happen, or some greenie. But for you kids out there who are in education, you think you're all smart and everything. Let me ask you this. Is this a new idea that I've explained to you? Have you heard of this idea before? Has anyone told you about the spectrum? Given you this concept, this idea? And has anyone explained it to you clearly enough that now maybe you could go and assess and identify different economies throughout the world, let alone your own economy? Okay? Have your professors done that? You know why? No, they haven't. Because they want to keep you in the dark. Because they want to indoctrinate you. So, anyway, that's our economic lesson for today. Oh, hang on. Oh, got them in the mail. Go ahead. It's graduation time. For all of you high school kids or college kids who are in college and you're finishing up your first or second year, not too sure, get this book, Worthless. Okay? It's short. It's like 180 pages, but it's also, very short like there. That'll give you more guidance and wisdom in college. This, not so short. Got a little more wide, 512 pages, but thankfully you read it only the chapters that pertain to you. This will also help you understand economics and finance. And this is actually largely apolitical. Worthless is apolitical until you get to the second half. So if you're looking just to get some advice, wisdom, non-political. If you don't like my attitude, fine. Just read the first chapter of that, or first half of that. This, largely not political, just information. So if you want to learn more, get these two books, Worthless, Bachelor Pad Economics, available in Kindle and paperback. Worthless is also an audio, in case you don't like to read, which I'm totally with you because I hate reading. I am not a big reader. I don't like reading. And that's all we got. I'm going to go, I think, throw up. Toodles.